Hey everyone, my name is Kat, and today we are doing another Reddit ghost stories. So let's just get right into it. This happened during our 4th year in high school during our first class that afternoon. Some of our classmates came in late, but our teacher didn't seem to mind. She just told them hurry up and asked someone to close the door. What struck me as odd was that she didn't say who she was talking to, and no one really moved. Eventually, someone just got up and closed the door. I found it weird, but I ignored it. A few minutes later, the teacher started rechecking our attendance. She looked a little bit confused, as if something didn't add up. She checked her list again, then asked us how many students were in the class. We gave her the correct number, the same number that matched her record book. Something still felt off to her. She said maybe someone's just sitting in, suggesting that maybe a student from another class had joined just to listen. That's when many of us started speaking up. We told her that there was no sit-in student. We were sure. We all knew each other. Then the teacher thought it might have been one of her actual students who hadn't been showing up to class, which is why she didn't recognize her. So she looked around the room again, trying to figure out who it was, but the person she had seen earlier was gone. That's when things got really strange. The door had already been closed, and no one had left the room since the last student came in. The teacher looked confused and said she was one of the last to enter. I didn't get a good look at her face, but I remember her lipstick. I'm going through the full description she gave me for privacy reasons, but as soon as she said it, most of us froze, and some even shouted in fear, because we all recognized who she was describing. It was one of her classmates from 3rd year. She had passed away just a few months earlier in an accident. The teacher didn't know her because she had only started teaching us that year, so she hadn't met her before. That classmate wasn't exactly the most serious about school. She wasn't a bad person at all, just someone who would often miss school for days or even weeks at a time. A few days before she passed, one of our teachers had called her mom, warning that she might have to repeat the year if she had kept being absent. After that, she started coming to school more regularly. But then, just like that, she was gone. We found out after class one day that she and her boyfriend had been in an accident, and they didn't survive. That afternoon, when the teacher described seeing her, knowing the door was locked the whole time and no one had left, it left us all shaken, especially the teacher who saw her. It's quite an experience, honestly, a story that might not be scary, but surely I don't and will not forget. The story is called The Boy Outside. Back when I lived in Georgia, Columbus, I lived in this real old place of a house on a property developed back in the late 1800s. The guy who originally bought the land and developed it was in my opinion, because the property had like 9 different soil types on it, so he could make his own personal little paradise green garden. And as someone with severe allergen issues, that kind of screwed with me a lot living there, except during particularly heavy rains that washed away the literal waves of pollen and the rare snowy winters. So anyway, it's a rare snowy winter, I want to say. I forgot the exact year. Late aughts, I think. Or maybe it was the early teens. Maybe some other poor sucker in Georgia can remind me when we had a good, hard snow Columbus waves between 15 and 20 years ago. And me and my dad are doing stuff around the house, i.e. he's drinking hard because he's a retired Marine, and Marines all have drinking problems to cope with PTSD. Ha 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 is a sarcasm, but he really did have a drinking problem. And I'm awake despite the late hour, so he has someone other than mom to pester with his incessant talking. Seriously, get my dad going when he's drunk. He's worse than a so-called valley girl. I don't know what that means, but we're loading the fireplace. The dogs are sleeping. We see the firewood pile is low, and both go out to grab some more firewood, by which I mean mostly me carrying it. That's drunk and falls over if he does it. It's no longer snowing super hard, but it's still going, and it's foggy Out there, there's a funeral home up on the top of the hill. Beyond the house, past this mid-sized retaining pond slash pit that keeps our house from flooding when it rains real bad. And the parking lot of the home has a couple of street lights. From the light nearest our house, me and Dad see a silhouette out against the snow. It's small, maybe just over 4 feet tall, which says child in me and Dad, being the at least halfway decent people we are, start going up to see what is going on. Why is there a kid out there at 0 dark 30? Right. I know what that means. Probably means like later night or something. And we find this kid, he can't be more than 10, maybe 11 years old. Pale as death, like he's been out in the snow for hours, and all he's wearing is a damn nightgown. He looks terrified and he's shaking and just stares at us, not saying a word. Dad sobers up almost instantly and gently tells the kid to follow us. We gotta get him inside. He's gonna freeze to death out here. I agree and reach out to offer him a hand. He recoils away and doesn't touch me. But he nods a bit when we gently invite him in, promise to get him warmed up and maybe something to eat or drink, and follows us down the hill and into the house. His face lights up immediately as soon as he's past the back door and in what is ostensibly our laundry room. He stops shivering, he stops looking scared, he just looks calm, content now. Dad and I turn and start to rush off to get him some blankets, towels, set up a space heater. We both turn away from him for less than 2 seconds, and I turn back around real quick because I was going to ask him if he wanted soup or maybe some chicken. He was effing gone, disappeared like a fart in the wind. I grab Dad's arm and he turns back to me, and he's almost turned as white as that kid was, which is impressive for someone who's visibly half Cherokee and thus much more red rather than white. The kid is completely 100% gone. We look outside, we see no footprints. The boy was barefoot. The only tracks were me and my dad's boots. Nothing else. Dad and I stare at each other for a while. Dad was clearly questioning whether or not he had some kind of drunk hallucination, except I was there and I'd seen the boy too, and I almost never touched booze, so that was definitely not damn hallucination. Over the following week and a half, the both of us asked around about a boy in a nightgown. It wasn't until Dad mentioned it to old Mrs. Funderburg. She died in 98. She was only 96 at that point. So she'd been around a freaking spell? Huh? That we got an answer, sort of. According to Miss Funderburg, when she was a child and the area was a lot less developed, that was way back when she was born, there's an old ghost story about a boy who'd been found dead in a rare Georgia snowstorm not far from where her home was. It's nothing but a nightgown. Nobody knew how or why. All anyone had were guesses. But it wasn't uncommon for people to claim seeing a boy, or at least a silhouette, in our area in the dead of night during really bad snowstorms, but nobody had ever gotten close to him before. He'd always just run off or disappear into the snow and fog. The best guess that me and Dad could have come up with after Miss Funderburg told us all we knew is that the kid must have gotten locked out outside of his house. I can only hope by tragic accident rather than active cruelty during some major blizzard. There was a pretty bad one in 1910, but for my part, I always figured it must have been the Great Blizzard of 1899 and just couldn't get back in. Judging by what me and Dad saw, the boy had been pretty damn frail. He would have frozen to death pretty quickly once the mercury went to 32 Fahrenheit or lower. But he disappeared when we brought him inside. It's been a while since that happened, at least 15 years. Nobody I've spoken to, including who used to live in our immediate vicinity, had seen anything like what me and Dad saw. Sometimes even now I find myself wondering if that was definitely real and not just me and Dad having some kind of shared hallucination somehow. Had that kid been there all along? Was all he wanted to be was invited into someplace warm, maybe somewhere he used to live, and that was good enough? I can still see his face if I think about it, that half-frozen, scared little face. Did it really take 100-some odd years or more for someone to care enough to try and bring him out of the cold? It's actually pretty sad. Oh my goodness. The little boy stuck out in the cold, and all he was waiting for was to be invited inside somewhere warm. Stop before I cry. This last and final story is called Lived in a Haunted House That Made Me Believe. Lived in a haunted house, tried to communicate with the presences. I asked for validation or proof this was real. I received validation from a random stranger that I met at a party. Then things got weirder. I'm watching ghost stories from Reddit on YouTube and decided to find a thread to share my story. This story is from around 2007 to 2008 and 2005. I moved to an old house in a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The house was in the middle of the town in what appeared to be a plot of land that the elderly owner refused to sell. There were businesses all around us. The benefit was that I rarely needed to drive anywhere. I had restaurants, bars, grocery stores, and even a movie theater in walking distance. The house was a small 2-bed, 1-bath that couldn't have been more than 1,000 square feet. It had an old stone wall, damp basement with a water tank. I thought it was odd considering we're in the middle of the city and city water would be more easily accessible. Anyway, the house was very small and old. Sometime after moving in, we invited some good friends to become roommates. In total, there were 4 people living in this home, which were 2 couples. It was a great time. I was in my lower 20s and we had parties from time to time. I'm not sure how long it took me to notice, but I wasn't the first person to point out to the group. I and others started to notice and talk more frequently about the shadow people that would dart around the house. We didn't even see them outside. Our house was surrounded by trees in all directions. We were cut off from the city that surrounded us by those trees. It was great, but made for a creepy scene at night. First, there was the shadow people. Many times when I was alone in the house, I'd be on my computer, playing loud music and playing video games. I'd often hear whispering and see shadows in my peripheral. I could turn the music off and the voices would stop. I'd say out loud, "I can hear you and see you. Please leave me alone. I'm just trying to enjoy my night." I could turn back on the music and hear the faint whispering again. At night, I'd always feel eyes just staring at me. It was especially strong when I was alone. One of my roommates suggested a Ouija board, but I strongly protested. My mom got one when I was around 12, and it did not go well, so I'm scared of them 100%. It was around this time I decided to pursue whatever this feeling was. I thought if I could feel it this often, then it has to be real in some sort of way. I started reading books about ghosts and people that call themselves mediums. I started meditating and opening myself up to that world. Was this a good idea? Probably not, but it led down a path that had a very surprising ending. During this time, unknown to me, one of my roommates was doing the same thing. The girlfriend of my friend started trying to communicate with whatever was in the house. Probably a bad idea too, I know. In my own meditations, I came to the conclusion that there were 2 main presences, a little girl and a tall man in dark, well-fit clothes. Neither felt bad or evil in any way. The man felt protective of the girl. I thought that there was a chance that I'm just being dumb and going crazy. While meditating, I asked for validation. If I'm dumb, then nothing would happen, right? I put out the request to the void, so to speak. Well, this was around Christmas. I had a party at work. They rented out the entire restaurant and had an open bar. I got a ride with a coworker who was a good friend of us all and knew about our ghosts too. She briefly lived in the house prior to her current roommates moving in. Well, after several drinks, my coworker decided to lead me up to one of them and introduced me. She had a dark sense of humor and wanted me to make a fool of myself to a pretty girl. Well, it freaking backfired in the oddest way possible. This woman looked me dead in the face as though she knew who I was or we met before. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your friend name of roommate will be okay. My blood chilled to the bone. How the hell could she have known his name? The little girl in your house needs to pass on. Ice filled my body. She mentioned a third thing that I cannot recall. Afterwards, we talked for about 30 minutes. She explained that she was also exploring the supernatural, and we connected because we both share the same astrological sign of Sagittarius. She showed me a Sagittarius tattoo on her ankle. She was very nice, and even met her again at next year's party. I know her stage name, but I will not share it here. Now, back to what she said. I had no idea what she could have meant by the first thing. My roommate is fine. Well, that night I went home a bit drunk, got a ride home, and passed out. I was woken at 3 a.m. to my girlfriend and a cop standing in my bedroom doorway. I was urged to go to the living room and sit down on a chair. There were 10 to 15 cops searching the entire house. I had no idea what was going on. I was still quite drunk. My roommate had been busted with drugs in a sting operation the night he gone across the state lines to get a large supply of a certain type of drug and was busted. They were waiting for him in our driveway. Now, the little girl is something of a longer story, but basically we got a medium involved to help her pass on after all our activity stopped. The air in the air felt lighter and free. We never noticed how heavy the atmosphere felt in the house until it was gone. I put out the request and received verification that there was indeed something out there. After all was resolved, I cut off ties with the other side. I feel as though I dealt with it enough. I know how it feels to step over the boundary, and will take that stride when it's my time. Sorry this was so long, but the coincidences in the story led me to believe that there was, in fact, a lot more to this world than we can see. That completes another successful ghost reading Reddit stories. Ow!